Love podcasts, hate nonsense. The PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, gosh, real lonely applause. The energy is so low.
Well, Sean had a lot of mouth before we started, didn't he? But now he's...
Pretty little mouth on him, isn't he?
Pardon?
The markets are crashing.
Do you know, it's hard to know who's falling more, the markets or your nan.
Or my nan.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's, right, okay. It's hard to know who's falling faster, the markets or me for Sean.
Yeah? Okay. I think we've done it.
Yeah, markets in free fall. Bad time to be a stocks and shares ISA. Bad time. Bad time to have an IG account.
I tell you something, I was listening... Oh, go on. Do you three?
What, you know those like men in their 20s on YouTube who are all like, this video is brought to you by Trading 212. You know, all you have to do is be financially smart. Has anyone checked in on those guys? Are they okay?
They probably are because, you know, all of their money is in sort of fictitious coins rather than, you know, actually tied to anything.
Meme coins rather than actual investors. No, I'm talking about serious financial advisors. You know, they're the people who are serious on YouTube.
Do you think anyone's bought the Melania coin? Does anyone know how that's doing?
Yeah, they did massive rug pulls on that.
Did they?
Yeah, Trump, Melania, all of them, to be honest with you, all of the Trump family coins.
All of the Trump family coins.
There were multiple, genuinely.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic pump and dumps around the election.
Goodness sake.
Yeah.
Is there a Boris Johnson coin?
Wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, no, interesting point about that. If a foreign state actor, or just another nation state, paid Donald Trump, say £1 million, personally, Venmo'd it to him, Revolut, Monzo'd it to him, I would have a problem with that from like a baseline corruption sort of standpoint, which I don't think is a controversial thing to say. But if you plough, I don't know, you're some Saudi businessman.
Pump and dump, plough. Like, you're really on one this morning, aren't you?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, carry on.
Do you think there's too much innuendo for 18 minutes past 9?
Yeah, I do a little bit,
But
yeah.
they do call it pump and dumps.
Okay.
They do call it a rug pull.
Yeah. Rug pull, pump and dump, plough. Okay, so Saudi's pumping and ploughing.
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, if you keep your transaction, you show, a year down the line and there's an investment summit. No, you're having your annual gathering around the orb in the UAE.
Okay.
You, Trump, a couple of other sheikh-based fellas.
And the orb.
And you just show him the transaction history and you go, fella, you might want to know that I did plow $2 million US dollars into your Trump coin, into Melania coin.
Yeah.
So could we have a little chat about
the rug pull,
tariffs or otherwise?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, sure, but then I guess that sort of works the same way as donations, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is also a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like I'm trying to put it in the same category as if that Saudi businessman just sent Trump $2 million.
Yeah.
You'd be like, this is a lobbying issue.
So you're saying it's a backdoor
issue.
Lobbying issue?
I think it could quite easily. You'll never know.
Okay.
It could quite easily be. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very easy vehicle for corrupting a political actor.
But Americans work very differently to our parliament, don't they? Like here, like you get a suit off ASOS and it's like behead the prime minister.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, it's like...
Here is $250 billion.
Yeah, here's like a 80% stake in Pfizer.
Crush the communists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a bit sexier, their corruption, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, big time. Big time. What's the footsie on? Maybe we should have a little. We could have like a ticker tape across the bottom of the episode. That'd be horrific. Can you imagine if we made Sean do that?
Have you seen that Fox News has taken it off for the first time?
What? Because the news is so bad.
What I wondered.
Well, they can't keep up.
Do you wonder if that's because he has that on in the Oval Office all the time, doesn't he? Fox News. Do you think he's like get that shit off there?
Don't remind me of how bad it's going.
Yeah.
FTSE was down like 7 or 10 points, I thought, this morning, trade opening.
Europe was down 5.
Bad day in Asia. We could do this.
Terrible day in Asia.
We could do this, couldn't we? Everyone's waiting for Wall Street to open.
Yeah, pretty.
Are you bullish, Santina? Are you bullish on the markets?
I've been watching quite a bit of Bloomberg over the weekend, and
Yeah.
I just fancied it. I just thought, oh, let me feel something.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's all the markets are closed. So it's entirely guesswork, and I learned the Asian markets were closed on Friday as well. So there's a little tidbit for you.
Great.
I was just like watching this guy from JP Morgan like predict a recession, but then also predict there could not be a recession at the same time. So he was like, basically, what I've taken away is economic commentary is just sort of making a load of suppositions based on nothing. It's quite good fun.
Well,
it's basically like horse racing.
How'd you get on at the National?
I didn't go. I was going to go. And you know what? People are going to be in the comments being like, oh, ma, it's so cruel. Da-da-da. If you eat meat, don't even talk to me.
Yeah.
Did you get on well?
No, I was one place short of winning 70 quid on Hewick because I got 7 places each way and Hewick was 8th. I lumped on a tenner for my daughter because she's not yet old enough to gamble, but I want to start her young. Mm-hmm. And
it's like when you start them with alcohol young.
Yeah. Well, she already has a bottle of brandy in the morning. Mm-hmm. But I backed the only horse that had a vaguely child-sounding name, Can Do Kid.
Okay.
Fell at the 8th, so I don't know if that's a bad omen or not.
Right.
So no, I didn't get on well at the National.
So your daughter is a failed gambler at this point?
Yeah. Well, is there such thing as a successful gambler? I guess not. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about, Ava Santina, is what you just said. Mm. Uncertainty. So yes, actually turns out economics, quite a technical, difficult thing that people devote their years of their life to studying and understanding and still get wrong. Mm-hmm. Who'd have thought that just imposing 40% tariffs on an island of penguins might have unforeseen circumstances for the global economy? But what you're saying there about certainty, I think is actually a really astute and meaningful point.
You've got to be joking.
Seriously.
Okay.
Seriously. Because if you are, I don't know, Nissan, or take any of the car manufacturers who have been kind of on the edge of staying in the UK or not, right? Where we're constantly worrying about whether or not the 25,000 or so jobs are going to be imperiled by these tariffs.
Vauxhall probably pretty relevant, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's say you're Vauxhall and you're thinking, top secret, we need to get out of the UK and we're going to build a factory, we're going to build a manufacturing plant somewhere else. Should we put it in Mexico? Should we put it in America? Oh, well, there's a 25% tariff on all cars imported into the United States, so maybe we should base it in the US. Yeah, but if Mexico does some kind of like fentanyl or immigrants deal, he might just wipe that tariff off the next day. And certainty we've been lectured about this for probably more than a decade now in relation to Brexit, right? Where certainty is all that business leaders want. They don't care. Well, they do care, but far better to say, this is the path that we're going to go down for at least the next 5 years, possibly 10. They would prefer to have sort of long-term industrial policy, investment strategies and goals that don't actually change depending on the political stripe of the government.
Yeah.
So one of the worst things that what Trump is doing in a long-term perspective is how unpredictable and how uncertain he is creating the economic conditions around America, but actually in the global economy. Because how on earth can you feasibly plan? You're the CEO of Vauxhall and you're going, should we onshore production in America? Should we nearshore production in Canada, Mexico, possibly the UK? Should we offshore and relocate everything to on what basis can you make informed decisions about massive strategic decisions like that if the picture that the context that you're trying to make that decision in is constantly changing and flicking backwards and forwards?
Well, and this is what I think I was getting frustrated at politicians over the weekend talking about the Brexit bonus about the UK, saying that, this is a point at which companies will be looking to invest in the UK because we got the baseline tariff, which is great, which means that you can still export to America. And you sort of go, well, No, because that was done at a whim, right? It was done with no rhyme or reason. And it's totally fictitious, this argument that Trump gave a more favourable tariff to the UK because of the special relationship. If anything, we shouldn't have had a tariff at all because the US sends more goods here than we sell to the US, right? I understand the car manufacturing levy. He's been talking about that for ages. He's been furious about... do you remember when he said to Merkel, there's no... how many Chevrolets do you see being driven around Munich compared to the number of BMWs you see in New York? We knew that was going to come in. And I sort of understand that tariff. But on anything else, I don't know why we're paying this 10%. Oh, do you know what? I had this line and I keep like reeling it out. But for some reason, I just did loads of other media this weekend. And every single time a Conservative MP called it the Brexit bonus, I'd call it the Taliban bonus. Because it's the same tariff.
Right, okay, sorry. We're getting the same tariff as the Taliban, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. How did they react when you said that?
They're like, what do you mean? It's 10%, brother. It's the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think...
Which is odd because Afghanistan actually has a 49% tariff on goods from the US. So, and we have...
Sorry. Wait. So the Taliban, death to the West, the Taliban. Why? What about the other 51%?
Well, I guess they don't want people wearing Levi jeans, do they? So they've been given a 10% tariff.
Graveyard of empires, death to America, death to Israel. We now have all of your Black Hawks, but only a 49% tariff on imported goods. Also, who's exporting to Afghanistan?
I don't know. Maybe there's like ramen. I don't know. Maybe they want that. Instant ramen.
I'm going to try and find out. What goods does... I assume they're going to have
it must be like clothing and things like that, no?
What goods does...
Stanley cups. People are quite into them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
They can withstand quite extreme heat. So I imagine they would withstand a bomb blast.
Got you. What do you think the UK should reply?
Reply?
Yeah. Do you think we should...
We've left them on red.
Yeah. Well, we're currently airing Trump. We think we're being the big man by not responding.
Well, we have responded.
But actually, I think it's kind of small dick energy, perhaps.
We have responded.
Go on.
Right? We've responded by vindicating Trump by saying, well, do you know what? Actually, Donald, you're so right. We're actually going to absorb the cost. The British taxpayer is going to absorb the cost of the levy that you've put on car manufacturing, right? Because I'm really concerned that we're not, the £9 billion in exports that we do to the US is going to be affected. So I'm going to give £2 billion to the car industry, which is about the 25% tariff, right? It's making up the shortfall. And then industry has responded because Jaguar Land Rover announcing that they're not going to export for the next month to the US. That is a de facto trade war. You're telling America we're not going to export to you because we're not going to pay those tariffs, or we're not going to force the consumer to pay the tariffs, right? Nintendo have done the same thing. Have you seen the Switch is up in the air now?
No.
Seen that? Yeah. Pre-orders of Nintendo Switch have been halted.
Because presumably they're being made in Japan.
Yeah, well, the problem is that it's the levy, right? If you pre-order, say you've pre-ordered a Range Rover, right? Or you've ordered a Range Rover. If that gets delivered, suddenly, who's paying that extra tariff on the top? Do you say the consumer has to pay that? Does Jaguar Land Rover absorb that cost?
Yeah, well...
It's probably easier to just not export anything for the next month or two until Donald decides that actually, I don't know if my maths is working out.
So I don't blame Jaguar Land Rover for, if they already have a couple of months worth of stock across the Atlantic. They go, we're going to pause exports for a month whilst we figure out our strategy. But that's kind of not what I'm driving at here. I'm talking about, in the same way that China has overnight, reciprocity. You hit me with 10%, I hit you with 10%. You hit me with 30%, I hit you with 30%. Actual trade war. Because I think there is still, in this moment we're in right now, I think Trump can still be persuaded to back out of this course of action. And I think if there was enough international pressure, if essentially everyone responded in kind, Wall Street tanks, as we've heard. You know, Asia's closed, but it was down.
But you can't
down.
You can't do that because we're a little bitch. Like if Trump turned around tomorrow, you don't know. He's so volatile. How do you know if he's going to respond to those tariffs in the way that he did to Canada and Mexico? You don't know. He might just be like, well, do you know what? You didn't like 10%? Here's 30. You don't know. The thing though as well, I was listening to Radio 4 this morning and they were talking about the markets, and they were saying this is a terrible time essentially to have stocks or to own a company, And I was thinking about it and I was like, God, this is so skewed to a certain percentile in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Because what I think is more interesting or would have been more worthwhile perhaps for our national broadcaster to be doing over the weekend is explaining how this affects everyone. Because if you are under 40 and you don't own a home, you are sort of at the behest of people who do own stocks, right? Who are going to be affected by the market fluctuations, but you have zero buying power in that. So if you are a renter right now and you might be looking to go rent another property, someone who say might have been hit pretty hard by a crash in the markets over the weekend might decide, you know what, I'm going to actually need to get a little bit more cash out of my rental properties. So the rent goes up. When that rent goes up, that then happens to the entire area because other landlords go, well, hang on, Mark's charging that. So I'm going to charge that as well.
Mark is a classic landlord name, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what I mean is that sort of domino effect of what happens to the markets, I think is what needs to be explained to people, because it's always, at the end of the day, Starmer today is announcing this £2 billion for car manufacturers, right? And it kind of reminded me of the 2008 financial crash, because who paid for the banks to be bailed out? The taxpayer. Whereas when you look at something like, just the other week, we were told there's no money left in the coffers, and so therefore it's going to have to come out of PIP payments. It's always the people at the bottom who pay.
Yeah. Amen.
It's never the people who actually have the cash, who have taken the risk, which, by the way, no one asked you to do. You didn't have to go and put your money into well, I mean, I suppose you do if you would like to make anything of yourself. But, you know, you don't have to. That's a risk that you took. And when the risk went...
Capital is at risk. It's all they ever tell you on the YouTube videos, Ava.
And then when your capital does dive, who picks up the payment? We do.
Well, yeah. That would be good, wouldn't it? Starmer bailed everyone out. Got the money for that, wouldn't he?
The amount that was wiped off of the
I think they're like 6 trillion down so far, aren't they?
Yeah, but
like
the amount, you could have given every American $20,000.
God.
Think about how many eggs they could have bought.
Heady days of COVID, stimmy checks. Yeah, look, I think I think there has been an increase, right, in these kind of penny stocks type traders, people who stick a couple of £100 into a stock or into an index tracker fund or whatever. But has been popularized by these kind of trading apps. But you're absolutely right. You know, the vast majority of those holdings on any kind of scale are either by some of the richest people in the world or the richest companies in the world. But it's important because 9 times out of 10, you know, the hedge funds that will be investing, everyone in this room and everyone who's watching who has a pension will be investing their pension funds. Quite a lot of them will be in tracker funds that are against these indexes, that are against the FTSE, that are against the S&P, and the long-term consequences. You know, if it keeps falling off and it keeps falling off. And by the way, like the floor for this, if it stays the way that it is lower than 2008. Like it can and will get worse than that. And if there's a run on your pension, then obviously there are consequences of it downstream. For people who might not necessarily think, oh, but I don't have any stock investments, you know, I don't have any holdings. If you've got a private or a state pension, yeah,
those gilts, they're running again. You can't stop them.
Look at them run. Are you worried? Does it concern you?
I think the slow response from the UK government really concerns me. But
globalisation is over.
Globalization is so over. Oh my God, it's like the corn laws all over again. Do you know what I mean? We are so feudal, baby. What really concerns me is that this team who were in Downing Street seemed to be so slow to the mark. For example, they did not expect Donald Trump to get in, right? They were expecting a Biden administration. So they were very slow to make relationships with Republicans. And yeah, oh, absolutely. And, you know, you put someone like David Lammy as foreign secretary, who has been extraordinarily rude to Trump in the past. Look, put that to the side. You know, it's fair game at the time. But, you know, that's not strategic, right? Secondly, you've now got these tariffs coming in. Trump's been warning about these tariffs for a very long time. And part of what the civil service should be doing, or what you should be instructing the civil service to do, is to create a contingency plan for the worst case scenario. And what it really felt like last week was that there'd been absolutely zero planning. And that was evidenced by, on gov.uk, this consultation being launched on the day of the tariffs being announced, which was like, hey, are you a business? Could you just tell us like how these tariffs are affecting you? Because we need to have a look at this. And we're not actually that sure. That is so last minute, right?
Yeah.
It frightens me how slow they are to the mark.
Yeah. I think the world is changing. And I think we talk about this quite often, but the politics of norms, the politics of being sensible, and the politics of like outrage and appall, basically being like, you know, how can you believe he has upended the global trade system in this way? And it sort of fails to recognise, well, the politics that Trump, Putin, Netanyahu all appear to be increasingly occupying is one of hard power, that you can just do things if you wish to do them, and you can clutch your pearls and be appalled, or you can try and enter into that arena with them. You can act, you can behave as if you are still sort of at the helm of one of the most powerful economies and countries in the world. And, you know, I saw some sort of mealy-mouthed, we're going to shelter British businesses from the storm type stuff. It's like, this is all that, like, okay, fine. That's your line for the Daily Mail. That's your line for BBC News.
It was actually the line for the Telegraph. It was his comment piece. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your line for the Telegraph. You have to reciprocate. You have to respond in kind. If a bully in the playground comes around and hits you around the back of the head and you don't do anything, do you think a way to stop him from coming back and doing it the next day is to sit there and say, yes sir, no sir, thank you very much sir? Or do you think it's to hit him back in the face? And by the way, as he goes around and hits everybody else, they also hit him. Quickly his behavior will change. I mean, that is the route that China is pursuing, right? That is the route that other nations are pursuing. I guess, look, the problem is it's the internal logic of mutually assured destruction, right? Which is, if they escalate, you escalate, and you see where you end up. But somewhat paradoxically, what led sort of the international trading system to the place that it is, where there is a relatively free exchange of goods and services, is reciprocity, because people realised, oh well, if we impose a tariff and if we're protectionist over the following goods, they're going to do the same to us, and as a result of which, barriers to trade decrease and decrease and decrease. I also think, just on this point, by the way, the sort of disparity between the nations, and that it's not universal, right? That he hasn't just gone 25% on everyone. That seems bizarre to me. And I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, he's because they plugged it into ChatGPT and it just sort of spewed something out. But like China already, I think they call it like trans shipping. Was that a raised eyebrow from the gallery? I
think it was like a burp or a belch or something. No, it was a raised eyebrow. Oh, was it? Okay.
He would say that though, wouldn't he? If he had burped in the gallery. Yeah, they're making the shipping trans now, where basically China, to obfuscate, the origin of goods, sends something to Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, where it is then sent onwards from there to a place like the United States that has barriers and tariffs against, for example, the Chinese state, to circumvent the tariffs that would be applied. So if you want to actually like properly, if you want to try and limit that, you probably go, all right, well, it's 25% on Bangladesh, 25% on China. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's always going to be 25%. But instead, you can see it with Northern Ireland because of the UK and the EU, where businesses will start to go, right, well, we can shave 15% off our tariffs here if we export from this place. How do you get around that? Rules of origin, tons of paperwork, tons of bureaucracy. So it's like if you actually follow the idea through, it's the complete antithesis of smashing the federal government and cutting red tape for businesses. It's going to have the complete opposite intended consequence.
Well, if you already had supply chains in place and you had manufacturing in place in the US, say you'd done this 4 years down the line, and just say, let me just give you a hypothetical. I'm not giving this is not an agree or disagree, but with this idea.
I disagree.
Okay, no, but that was for the audience.
It doesn't matter what it is.
That was for the audience, not for you. Yeah. Hypothetically, if he had secured this deal with Ukraine, right, and it had become a protectorate and he was taking all of the minerals from Ukraine.
Yep.
And he had also bought Ireland out of all of the pharmaceuticals. And he had set up new factories in America that were already working, which meant that he was now manufacturing in the US products that they can currently only get from overseas. Slapping a tariff on then to do this sort of protectionism, you would be able to see the logic. The slapping a tariff on things like, especially like iPhones and Samsung phones. There was someone on Twitter who was being so serious as well. He was saying, right, well, about time. Apple have been charging us $1,200 for iPhones. That price is going to come down now. Educated by a pigeon, that guy.
That was a good one. I like that.
But if you had all of those structures in place, you could understand that move to protectionism, right? But before you've got it all in place, you're just making the American consumer pay for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't add up. Also, on your point, one thing, actually, can I talk about one bonus? I'm going to get so many
Is this the Taliban bonus?
No. The Lib Dems are going to be in the comments after this. They're like, yeah. But anyway, the one bonus.
That's a really good impression of Lib Dems.
Thank you. American consumerism of cheap shit is so out of control.
Yeah.
Companies like Shein that are exporting to the US. I don't know
Is that how you meant to say it?
Shein.
I thought it was Shein. I'm not the right person to ask. I'm asking you for guidance here.
I feel like they said Shein in the
Shein.
Parliamentary
Cool.
Select Committee, but I could be...
No, I'm sure you're right. Go on. Shein, yeah.
They can't export to the US under these tariffs, right? Because it's wiped out their entire profit margin. And I don't know how familiar you are with like influencer culture where they buy sort of like $5,000 worth of Shein products. And I'm not joking. It's a haul, but it's enough to fill like a primary school, like assembly hall. The stuff on there is so cheap.
Yeah.
And there have been reports of like bits of paper being sewn into these clothes, which are like from these sweatshops that say, please help me. They're so awful, the working conditions. The one bonus, you could make an argument that Trump is perhaps a man who is really concerned about the climate and really concerned about workers' rights, because he's so tired of these poor workers in parts of China. I think it's in Xinjiang. I think that's where some of it is.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of cotton up there, I think.
He's very, very concerned about their welfare. And so he's stopped the import of those products.
Right.
He's also very worried about those little children who are digging out minerals in Cambodia. Very concerned about them.
Yeah, look, this is the thing. When you try and understand the sort of the rationale, the logic for explaining why he's doing this, there are competing explanations from various parts of the administration. One might be because we can extract concessions from Canada, Mexico, whoever it is, on things that we care about, and it's leverage in negotiation, right? So that's one possible explanation, which directly contradicts the other explanation, which is that this is a long-term revenue generator that will enable us to fund the cut on the tax, to stop taxing tips, to stop taxing Social Security, to stop taxing anything else. Well, both of those things cannot be true, right? Because if you're extracting concessions from Mexico on fentanyl trafficking, presumably in exchange you're going to cut the tariffs on them, and therefore how can you rely on that as a revenue stream to provide the cover for the other things that you want? And then the only other, and this is the great question over all of this, which I still do not have the definitive answer to, which is how much of this is guided by a desire to fundamentally rewire the international financial trading system, Mar-a-Lago Accord, etc. Is Trump even cognizant of those ideas and those plans? Is it sort of postscript intellectualizing by other people in his administration, Besant or the chief of the Economist Council, whose name escapes me, who wrote the paper that kind of talks about devaluing the dollar and the need to devalue the dollar? Okay, possibly. Or does Trump just has he got it into his head that operating trade deficits with other countries is essentially like net bad, has to be resolved, has to be fixed, and therefore will pursue it at any cost, i.e. imposition of tariffs? I don't know the answer to any of those questions, but when you try and understand the why, none of the competing explanations appear to add up for me in any way.
Quite like the latter one, the final one that you gave there. That's probably it, isn't it? Net bad. Net bad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of commentators out and about this weekend talking about how America will have to pay more for goods because you'll never get those sort of products made in America because of the cost of the workers and the workers' rights and all that. This is not the conversation probably we should have right now, but it's a conversation that definitely needs to be had. Like, is it ethical to offshore your sweatshops elsewhere? It's sort of like how we import loads of steel here because we shut down all of our steel industry, and we now don't count steel as part of our carbon emissions, right? Because we import it. Well, should you not have to calculate the carbon that was emitted to create the steel elsewhere if you're going to import it? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of like carbon neutral steel that comes into the UK now, and you go, well, there's probably a child somewhere choking to death from the fumes. No doubt. And it's the same thing with like Nike shoes and like iPhones and all of that sort of crap.
Yeah.
Shein. Someone somewhere is suffering. And perhaps the globalization conversation should be, no one should be.
Yeah.
If you're going to import into America or export into America, you should have to uphold the sort of standards that they have in America, maybe.
If your theory of if your competitive advantage lies in the fact that you have non-existent labour laws and a high number of young people, therefore able to operate sweatshops, maybe we should say that's not the kind of competitive advantage we want to engage with. Yeah.
Yeah, like Boohoo got done for having all those factories in Leicester.
Yeah.
That were actually better paid and better conditions than where the other shit they were importing. And we were like, oh, in Leicester? How could you do that?
How could you?
No, you import that from the country where you're allowed to hurt people.
I mean, these are much bigger questions about consumer culture, right, and materialism.
I think COVID's done a lot of that. We've just sort of we've lost the run of ourselves. The sort of shite that you see on TikTok of, like
TikTok shop.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the total crap.
Temu, has anyone checked in on Temu?
Yeah, well, all of
okay?
that shit. They'll do people will do like a day in the life or whatever, and some of the products that they're using is just extraordinary. Like, I don't know, 4 different kind of mops, like toothbrush cleaners, like little stupid magnetic things that clean your jewelry, and all it just plastic fucking everywhere.
Yeah. Retreat to the hills, grow vegetables.
Do you know one thing
Raise
I thought
chickens.
that you might enjoy about Starmer? You talked about bullies and Keir Starmer, and what I noted down while you said that, there were 2 versions of the Telegraph on Saturday night for the Sunday version for the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah.
First version had Keir Starmer front and centre, editorial, his comment piece, and then above there was an editorial explaining what had been said in the Starmer comment piece.
Is this the splash?
It was the splash. An hour later, a different Telegraph was published.
Yeah.
Wasn't on there.
Right.
And what I was thinking about was like, they obviously picked the Telegraph, right? Because they want to speak to those voters. I think that a lot of this Trump conversation and a lot of the vindication that Starmer has offered Trump on these tariffs by not retaliating is sort of a pledge to, or a pander to reform voters, because he's very frightened about the sort of MAGA Nigel Farage fans. And it's sort of a pander of like, look how sensible we are. We're not fighting with Donald Trump. We're not going to do a trade war. I'm very calm, and this is a calm government that's secure. The Telegraph don't give a fuck about you. The way that you put all of your effort into choosing the Telegraph and then they just bin you off of the front page.
What for? What did they carry instead?
I can actually tell you.
Yeah, I saw McSweeney described, there was a Daily Mail front page a while ago that said, Starmer, UK's nuclear deterrent is safe in my hands. And McSweeney said, if I could marry a front page, that's the one I'd marry.
Really?
Yeah.
I've got the both of them here for you.
All right. But for people who aren't familiar with newspaper production, it's quite common that over the course of an evening, the first draft, the second draft, and then finally the main paper that goes out and gets printed and distributed everywhere, they do chop and change over the course of like from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock to midnight, don't they?
First, second, and final edition.
Yes. So
It's not as common now, though,
yeah,
because the print is run differently, if you're interested. Sunday Telegraph.
yeah,
This was the first version. You'll be able to see it. Viewers will not be able to. Here it was. Starmer, loud and proud here. PM vows to shelter UK from tariffs. You can see that pretty much the whole page is dedicated to Starmer and a little bit on the Grand National. I'll then show you what they did. Labour MP arrested on rape and child sex offences. That absolutely should be on the front page, by the way. Don't get me wrong. But you would think there might be another little Starmer piece on there. No. A little column to Starmer. And then at the bottom, mother jailed for Southport X or Twitter post should be freed, says Suella Braverman. These are not your friends. They do not like you. And I wish, for God's sake, like Labour comms, go and talk to the people who voted for you. Like, I know you've got local elections coming up. I know you're worried about Runcorn, and I know you're worried about various other, places like Kent where Reform are going to pick up. You're not going to win them back by writing in the Telegraph.
What did you think of Badenoch saying over the weekend that those Labour MPs shouldn't have been allowed into Israel?
Beautiful segue. Well, look, I don't think I need to say anything. I think we should just watch the Emily Thornberry clip.
Oh, okay.
Should we play Badenoch first?
Yeah, okay. Let's roll the clip.
The big story with these two Labour MPs being refused entry to Israel, the government has said it was unacceptable. But do you think that Israel was entitled to do what they did? What's your view?
Countries should be able to control their borders. What I think is shocking is that we have MPs in Labour who other countries will not allow through. I think that's very significant.
Shocking because?
Well, if you look at the reasons why the Israeli government has given for why they're not letting them in, they don't believe that they're going to comply with their laws. MPs do not have diplomatic immunity. I believe that the people who represent us in Parliament should be people who should be able to go anywhere in the world and people not be worried about what they're going to do when they go into those countries.
Are you suggesting the Israelis were right to worry that these two Labour politicians would break the law if they got into the country?
Well, that's the reason they gave. And what I believe is that every country should be able to control its borders. We do the same thing. There are many people that we don't allow into our country. And I don't think we should be setting precedents in a different way.
So just to be clear, you believe the Israeli government's account of this, not the Foreign Secretary who says they were treated unacceptably?
The Foreign Secretary has given his view. I've given my view.
Jeremy Vine had a bit of interesting commentary about this. Jeremy Vine was on the Laura Kuenssberg show.
I'm not surprised by that at all. Jeremy Vine only does interesting commentary.
Yeah, well,
that is all he does.
Concur, brother. He was on the panel for the Kuenssberg show, so he was watching it, and he explained in newscast afterwards that he was having this sort of conversation with Emily Thornberry, who was also on the panel, where there was sort of steam coming out of her ears while Kemi Badenoch was speaking, and Jeremy Vine turned to her and said, "Do you think that was a mistake? Do you think that was an error, what she just said there?" Because it's so incongruent with, firstly, when parliamentarians are overseas, right, it is sort of the gentlemanly thing to do as a fellow parliamentarian to say that they should be protected at all costs. You don't leave them out on a limb. She was also saying this, by the way, when they were in the, I don't even know, oh no, they had landed at that point. But it hadn't been confirmed that they'd landed.
Brother, get a flight radar up, man.
But,
you know what I mean?
That's a dangerous thing to do, right? Yeah. For another politician to basically just say, I don't care. Like,
detained and deported, yeah.
That's a frightening precedent to set,
yeah.
Right? There was another point I wanted to add there.
Free speech?
Yes. The biggest free speech advocates in the world, all right? How many times have you heard Badenoch go on and on about how you should be allowed to say whatever you want, when you want it? She said in that clip there, I don't know what they have said before, but there are certain Labour MPs who perhaps aren't, shouldn't be allowed in there, is essentially what she was arguing. And now Emily Thornberry, do you want to add anything to Kemi before we play Emmy?
Well, I just say that the entire point is it doesn't matter what they say. The entire point is, if they are critical, if they are in support of, if they're completely ambivalent about the issue that you think is fundamental to our times, i.e. supporting the state of Israel, it doesn't matter. Either you believe it, or if it was like slightly more obscure, but we're literally talking about a politician's right to discuss matters of foreign policy, which I would say is like quite central to their jobs. It's not like they're sort of, going out on a limb and talking about fucking woke cereal. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's going on in the Middle East is quite important, and you'd expect them to talk about it. You'd expect them to have a view on it. Especially
as we're providing a lot of money to the region.
Well, yeah, quite.
You're giving a lot of money to Israel and Gaza. You're giving a lot of money in aid to Gaza. And one of the purposes of their mission to go over there to have a look. So Abdissam Mohammed is on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. So one of the things that they were going to do was to ensure that the aid was getting into the West Bank and getting into Gaza.
Can't imagine why the Israelis wouldn't want them going and checking on that.
Well, enter Emily Thornberry.
Emily, I must just ask you there, Camille Badenoch indicating she believes the Israeli government's account that these 2 Labour MPs were up to no good, essentially. What's your take of that? You look quite horrified, I have to say.
Abdissam Mohammed, and I know Yang very well. I know Abdissam particularly because she's a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. And these are 2 young women who are potential leaders. I mean, people listen to what they say. They are highly respected parliamentarians, and Israel is badly advised to try to alienate them, to humiliate them, and to treat them in this way. Because people listen to what these 2 young women say, and they will do for decades to come. And in my view, Israel really needs to start making friends as opposed to alienating people in this way. I think that it's an insult to Britain, and I think it's an insult to Parliament. I am outraged, and I cannot believe that the leader of the opposition would simply take on the face of it what it is that the Israelis say, because we know that there are times when the Israelis say what the Israelis say first time isn't what they say when they've had a chance to think about it. All we have to think about at the moment is the way in which those people arriving at the scene in ambulances were shot, and the first description and explanation that the Israelis gave, and now they're going back on it. I think that they will rue the day that they did this to British parliamentarians. This is the first time that they've ever refused MPs access to the country, and they were going with a parliamentary group that was organised with Carbu that has brought parliamentarians into the region for decades, twice a year, and frankly, the insight the parliamentarians have is because they visit the area. If Israel has something to hide, then that would be a terrible thing. But frankly, they should be open to parliamentarians going to see what is actually happening on the ground.
Okay, I thought that was quite extraordinary from her, actually.
She's punchy, isn't she, Thornberry?
There's a very specific line in there. I don't want to get it wrong of what she said. You might have the document up in front of you.
I could probably pull it up in 30 seconds if you so wish.
I've got it all for you.
Go on.
If Israel has something to hide, that would be a terrible thing. And then she says, let's look at the way in which those people arriving at the scene in ambulances were shot, and the first description and explanation from Israel, and now they're going back on it. We know that there are times when what Israel has to say the first time isn't what they say when they've had a chance to think about it. She was essentially accusing Badenoch, or she was chastising Badenoch for believing Israel in the first instance. And she was likening that to the attack on the ambulance workers? Yeah. She essentially said Israel don't tell the truth to begin with all the time.
Yeah, until video comes out that proves otherwise, and then they have to backtrack.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very strong line.
I kind of, with that one though, with the ambulances, I was just sort of like, I don't care if the ambulance lights are on or not. Like, you don't shoot up an ambulance, man.
What is that?
Sounds like they may yeah, a bombing is about to take place.
I saw some comments, a lot of comment actually over the weekend about how Wan Yang and Abdissam Mohammed hadn't ever tweeted against Hamas.
This is just such...
it's so playground.
Why haven't you tweeted about X? Why haven't you tweeted about Y? Shut the fuck up. I don't care.
Albie, actually, he's going to be on the podcast later this week. He's a Conservative commentator. He runs the LGBTQ cons.
Conservatives, that is.
Conservative, sorry.
Not con people who are gay.
Conservatives.
Yeah.
He tweeted
Although they deserve representation as well, I guess.
that he didn't agree with Badenoch. They've got it with the LGB alliance. Anyway, he tweeted that he didn't agree with Badenoch. He was like, absolutely not. This should be a blanket issue. All parliamentarians should be free to go and, be shown countries.
Particularly like an ally.
Particularly an ally. He actually stressed that point. Anyway, someone replied, I can't remember what it was, but he was like, you never said anything when this person wasn't allowed into this country. And Albie was like, because it was 2009 and I was in school. People need to touch grass to be like, you never said anything about this. And I checked your entire Twitter feed and I've not found this.
Talking about people that need to touch grass, I've got the main imports into Afghanistan from the United States.
Please.
They are nuts, vaccines, and concentrated milk, in that order. What I will say, it is quite low total value. $21 million is the total value of the imports. Nuts compose 7 million
from the US.
Yep. Vaccines 6.3 million, and concentrated milk 1.52 million. That was in 2022.
I wonder what nuts they're importing.
Apparently, in 2019, they were importing nuclear reactors, which I feel like
best way to get rid of COVID
was an oversight.
Suella Braverman's been speaking about free speech as well. Have you seen that?
It doesn't surprise me.
She was talking about Lucy Connolly, who is the wife of a Tory councillor. She is in prison for 31 months.
Yeah.
After she called on people to set fire to the migrant hotels.
Look, I've made myself unpopular saying what I think about that on the pod before. And I'll try to move the argument along a little bit, which is ignoring where you might come down on hate speech and whether or not it's a criminal offence and whether or not the state's job is to intervene, before violence, before speech. Let's park that for a second. I just want to talk about, if you live in fucking any constituency in this country where the rate for solving burglaries is effectively zero, because huge amounts of crime doesn't even get reported now, right? You will know someone. I myself have been a victim of a crime and I haven't bothered to report it to the police, because at most they'll give you a crime number. That's only any good to you if you've got insurance. If you don't have insurance, what does it fucking matter, right? They're not going to investigate it. They're not going to find your stuff. They're not going to find the person that did it. And then you read that police forces are arresting thousands of people for things that they're writing on social media. And how can you not come to the conclusion that some fundamental change has to happen in criminal justice? Like that is not I'm not trying to diminish the importance, although I do think there is a very valid free speech argument to be had, of hate speech and things that people are writing on social media. But if you said to most people, would you rather that the police were arresting people for things that they wrote on Facebook or arresting people for burglaries? They'd say burglaries. Now, I know you don't have to, it's a false choice, right? You can do both, famously. But nonetheless, you've got to be looking at that. You've got to be looking at this wife of this Tory councillor and thinking, something's not right here.
How sad of you to double down. So what I'm going to come back to you with...
I'm so disappointed in you.
What I'm going to come back to you with. A couple of years ago, someone Instagram DM'd me. I'd just been on Piers Morgan, and someone Instagram DM'd me with telling me that they were going to burn my family home down. And they sent pictures of bodies that were on fire or had been mutilated and said, this is what I'm going to do to your parents. That person was arrested and they got a suspended sentence. I think 18 months, I think they got in the end. At the time, I think I was valid in doing that. That was a threat that to me felt very serious.
Yeah.
I do not think that is any different to what Lucy Connolly did about these people in hotels who she said should be set fire to. Someone said they were going to set fire to my parents. They were arrested. She said, go and set fire to the asylum hotels. The country doesn't see it in the same vein. And I'm going to say something. It's probably because I'm a young white journalist and people would think that's abhorrent. They can sort of see their daughters in me. They can see their sisters in me. And they think I would not want that happening to my next of kin. But because we've dehumanized asylum seekers to the extent that we have over the past decade or so, they're not humanized anymore. So the idea that someone jumps on Facebook and says, set fire to them, we go, well, she didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. But apparently when someone said it to me, they meant it.
No, I don't disagree with anything you said there about dehumanization, but I do think there's a difference in specificity. To send you personally a threat and say, your parents, your house, and here's a picture of what I intend to do, which is clearly horrific, versus a generalized burn down all the hotels, kill all the Muslims. I'm not making excuse. I'm not saying that these are like great examples of wonderful bits of speech that I agree with. I just wonder if there's a difference there between those two things.
Unfortunately, someone has to be the example. And in this case, it's Lucy Connolly. She knows she made a mistake. That's why she took the post down a few hours later. 31 months, I would argue, is actually that is a pretty lengthy sentence, right? That is pretty extraordinary. And when you put it in the context of theft, rape convictions, when you put it in the context of all of that, it is infuriating. However, you cannot say you cannot incite violence like that. You can't do it. And she's now the example of it. People around the country will be looking at that and they'll go, oh, I tell you something, Starmer will lock you away for just saying you want to set fire to someone, and they won't post it. What happened is, if you go to those migrant hotels, by the way, like Care for Calais, who are working with a lot of these hotels, they'll tell you that a lot of them had to go and get psychiatric help. They couldn't sleep. They had to have a fire warden at hand because they thought they were going to be burnt alive for the months after that.
Yeah. They've all got 24-hour security as well, don't they?
And they are people, as much as the media don't want you to believe it.
Just before we started our record,
that showed you, didn't it? Showed him.
I think this is a nice place to wrap things up. Is inside the back cover of your notebook. There's a leaflet. If you could just pull it out and show it to everyone.
No. There's two things in there actually.
Not that one. The one behind it.
Oh, you didn't want that one.
No.
Yeah, I know you want that one.
Yeah,
but there's
blue thing.
Yeah, but that's because I was there last week.
Was it?
So it's in there.
Could you show that?
There we go. That's the Reform leaflet that I picked up at the Runcorn by-election. But there's also...
What's Sarah like? Good candidate?
She's an interesting choice for them.
Go on.
But there's also a Labour MP in the back. So there's balance. All right?
The duality of Santina.
That's just what's happened in the last week. It's just in my notebook.
Yeah. Okay.
She is an interesting... I know you're trying to do me over there.
No.
She's
never.
An interesting choice for them.
Why?
I wouldn't exactly say she was particularly agile as a candidate.
Right.
She presents very well, but she presents like a Conservative candidate. She could actually, do you know who she presents like? A Liberal Democrat.
Fuck.
She was an interesting choice.
Liberal Britain rides again.
But I think that was her first big bit of media, so maybe she might be a bit more forthright in the coming weeks.
First big bit, what, with you? Or?
That day. I think I was her second on-camera piece, though.
Not quite a scoop, half a scoop. Second scoop.
Well, no, but the other
Vanilla.
ones... The other...
What's your second scoop when you get an ice cream?
The other questions were like, are you excited to be the candidate? I'm not joking.
Isn't it great that your name is Sarah?
Yeah.
What's your favourite thing about Runcorn?
And like one of the questions...
Is she local?
Ish. One of them was like, Farage, do you have confidence in her? And it was like, well, you think you're going to get the scoop of the century? Him going, no.
Just announce her as the candidate, having second thoughts.
Anyway, if it doesn't work out, we've got an MP that will kick her down the stairs.
Where are the markets at? In the hour of the record, we should have tracked this over the course of the record. Oh, sorry, one sec.
I think they'll win, though. I do think Reform will win. They're out on a visit today.
Are they? FTSE. The FTSE Oh, it's recovering. Since open, it's recovering.
That's nice, isn't it?
It's not looking good, is what I will say.
Oh, she's really struggling.
Yeah, Nikkei down, Dow
What do you
Jones.
mean she's recovering? She's down 5.
No, I'm just like, if you look at the drop since open,
Yeah.
it's gradually sort of worming back.
Oh, you've got my one looks different to yours. Have you done 250 though?
This is the 100.
Oh, why do ours look so different?
I think it's
It's just like when you use
I think it's-
Trainline and they give you different prices on different devices.
I guess so. No, I think the price of the FTSE 100 is the same. It's just how Google presents it, and God, everything's red. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but don't tell me that's a good thing.
Red bad.
What was
Right.
that? What was that, mate? Nike's up. Yeah. Are you trying to say Nikkei or
No, Nike,
the clothing brand?
I'm trying to say.
the Nikkei is down, Nike's up.
Arigato.
Nike's up, so Sean will presumably buy stocks in it now, shares in it now. He's like, yeah.
Investing with Sean. Are you going to buy the dip?
Am I going to buy the dip?
Yeah.
Nah.
Okay. Cool.
No. I might. Are you?
No, I don't know. I don't have any. I'm very long on London property. I'm not in a position to invest any money. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What should I invest in? Comment below.
The wisdom of crowds. That was fun.
Yeah.
Good little morning.
Okay.
Where do you think it ends? Global recession? It'd be fun to revisit this
Do you know what though?
when the banks have
Would
collapsed.
it feel any fucking different to what it does now?
No.
Do you know? I think I'm in a terrible mood because I found out that I got my tenancy agreement, my next one, sent through, and she's put the rent up, and I just thought,
That's unlike landlords.
I know, but I've had a year of a shower that's been electrocuting me and black mold that I've cleaned off. By the way, I do a bleach wash once a month. It's nice. To put the rent up after that, I'm like, recession. What more could you do to me?
Yeah. It all hurts the same.
Sales of Victoria's Secret are up. Did you see that?
Every recession.
Yeah.
Every recession, the lingerie, it goes through the roof.
Yeah. And lipstick.
I guess.
When you're getting fucked?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think of like they can, in the rentier economy, they can charge us for everything apart from shagging, but I can't quite figure it out. I like your one. Everyone's getting fucked.
Yeah.
Let's stick with that.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
See you on the Reddit.
Goodbye.